The video that you are about to watch is an excerpt of the original. After my long efforts in dealing with YouTube's copyright management system, I had to give up. I haven't given up my projects though. And while we cannot publish the entire video here due to the imminent danger of having the channel closed down, you can still enjoy excerpts which we've carefully chosen in order to make this video meaningful, fun, and educational. If you want to watch the complete video, including the sound of the music from the original recording, as well as special edition videos which will never be published here on YouTube due to the same copyright issues, and the Beatles 150 series, as well as other series and courses, you're welcome to visit my Ko-fi or Patreon page. I hope you enjoy this video. Hi everyone! Welcome back to the Beatles 150 series. This is number 18. And it is a song called This Boy. And I understand it is the second song on their single. And the first one was I Want to Hold Your Hand. Now, as usual, Vlad has given me a few little facts and details of this song before I dive in listening. So I'm going to read to you what I have learned. The genre is classified as beat. Paul describes this song as another hotel bedroom song, written when they had a couple of hours to kill before getting ready for another performance, sometime in September 1963. And according to the same Paul McCartney, it seems that this song was written in 2 hours. From 1 to 3 p.m. The Beatles incorporated This Boy in their live performances from December 1963 through June 1964. Well, that's interesting because that wasn't a very long stretch of time. It became a permanent feature in their British concerts. They played it during their January appearance at the Olympia Theatre in Paris, in February during their Washington Coliseum concert, and then at Carnegie Hall and during their second Ed Sullivan Show appearance in Copenhagen, and finally in Adelaide and Melbourne, Australia. Well, so now I get to find out how it sounds. Let's dive in. And it fades out and ends unresolved. What a great way to leave you hanging and wonder how on earth this story turned out. It's up to our imagination. I enjoyed the harmonies. They were a lot more smooth and, well, there are 3 parts rather than just 2 voices harmonizing. And so it gave a more richness to the sound. And I liked the way they used the harmony with the rhythm to give that nice, almost barbershop style sound. It's a lot more full than what I've heard with the Beatles so far. All kinds of things to pay attention to. So let's go back to the beginning and listen together, and I'll pause every little part that strikes me as something for us to explore. Of course, we start off with this strummed guitar. Strum, strum, strum. And it's kind of bright and catches our ears. But then as we're getting into this intro a bit further, what really catches my attention is the bass. And I like the way it's active and interesting. It has very much a life of its own. Let's listen to that bass. We'll go back to the strummed chords, but then notice when the bass comes in. And I like the way it goes bum 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 bum. And it's that bum 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 bum, which sets us up for that boy and kind of launches us into the vocal trio. Notice how that moves us into, because when we get to these harmonies, they're, as I said, it's 3 parts. I feel like saying it's 3 whole parts, meaning it's very different from the single line or the 2-part harmony that they have been throwing in to their music to liven things up. And we've heard a lot of fourths and fifths and bright open harmonies when we have 2 parts. Now suddenly we have 3 parts, and they're close and they're tight and they're very smooth. And the interest here, as the voice enters, is more, it's not dull. To me, it feels very packed with a tight energy, but at the same time, it's incredibly smooth. And how do we find that energy in something that is so smooth and complex harmonically? We find it in the subtle underlying rhythmic syncopation, which is coming. That boy, because boy comes on a syncopated note. Bum, bop, 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 bum, bop, bop, bop. That boy is not what we hear. That boy. This is the beat. Instead we hear that boy. And so the beat comes after. And it's not your typical rhythm in your face feel that a lot of rock music has, with this syncopation and this strong groove or rhythm sound. And yet that syncopation is there, and it's incredibly effective. But it's the bass that sets us up for it even more. Well, of course the guitar marks the beats and the triplets and all of that, but I feel like the bass is an important part here. And I love the way he articulates. Da-da-ba-bum. He stops it there. Listen to the smooth. Dum bum 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 ba da da ba bum. And that's what pushes us into this. And the word that and boy, that ends with a consonant. Boy begins with a consonant. It's as if the bass is articulating those back-to-back consonants in anticipation of that boy and the stop in the sound. It's a rhythmic effect that those 2 words have. That boy. And the bass is helping prime our ears for that special moment. That boy. Listening once more, and then we'll go on. And then as the voices carry these long lines, took my love away. The bass is no longer doing yap ba ba bum ba 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 bum. Instead, it's holding more of the sustained notes, but when it changes a note, it's when the voices are holding a note. And he'll regret it someday, that regret it. Again, the t of it becomes a rhythmic feature in itself. And so what we might feel as, we might think at first is kind of a slow, lazy, not particularly ear-catching song, is so full of subtle, acute interest. Not a cute little song, but acute, the word itself. That's another great moment where we've had this bump da 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 bop bop bump da 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 bop bop, which we've heard in the strummed guitar, and which I said at first, okay, it kind of set us up, but then our ears were pulled towards what the bass is doing underneath everything. Now suddenly, what this guitar was doing becomes incredibly important because its absence in this moment. Bump da 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 bop bop bump da 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 bop bop. Now listen to what happens here. it suddenly goes bop, bop, and then we fall back in. Bump, da 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 da, bop, bop, bop. And where does it fall? On this boy. It's as if it's emphasizing the person of this boy. And I'm curious because I guess the song before this also wasn't terribly astonishing in its chord choices. So are they toning it down now? Or are they going to get wild again with their chords? Does this just happen to be some songs they wrote which their ears took them towards more of the standard progressions? Just now, as I'm listening to this, I'm suddenly reminded of the American Negro spirituals where a group of singers just gets together and sings at a slow pace, harmonizing by ear these rich, elaborate harmonies and these melismatic lines where, you know, they take a harmony and then they extrapolate melodies out of it and explore and wander around one side or the other. This is a much more straightened version, much more straightened. The inner voices, they don't just sit on a note. Just when you think it's starting to rest somewhere, some voice goes down, or they sit on a suspension. They hold it up again, and you were waiting for it to resolve, and then it goes on, and just at the last second, it resolves and carries on because now another chord is in there, and it becomes a suspension again. And perhaps you can see my love of vocal harmonies shining through. One of the things I love as a musician is the experience of singing in a group. I guess I could call it the choral experience. And it doesn't have to be a large choir. It can be a small vocal ensemble. But this experience of blending harmonies, and there is really nothing quite like it. It's different from jamming together on an instrument. It's different from an instrumental chamber ensemble. When it's the pure voices and the blend that happens, it's like you become one, not only with the music, you become one with the sound around you. You become one as a unit of singers. You are no longer a singer on your own. You are part of this instrument which creates this vocal sound, and this blend of voices is not... All I can say is there's nothing quite like it. And if you haven't sung in a choir, I don't know exactly how to express and explain the beautiful satisfaction that kind of music making can give. Anyway, so maybe I would say that this is a rather choral sound. Now, before we dive into this, I guess this is a good moment to talk about the harmonic scheme up until this point. Because as I said, it's not particularly unusual. And it's one of the things that allows us to immerse ourselves in this experience of enjoying every little harmonic transition and the we could say the hidden, although it's not really hidden, but it's not in your face, rhythmic element in this singing. That is the chord sequence. What do we have here? We have a D, a B minor, E minor, A7. Okay, 4 chords. D, B minor, E minor, A7. The same 4 chords in the same order. And then we have D, B minor, E minor, A7. That's the third repetition of those same 4 chords. And then, last of all, we have D, B minor, E minor, A7. That's our fourth repetition. D, B minor, E minor, A7. Number 5 of the same 4 chords. And then, of course, we get to verse 2. Now, along the way, I think we come down here. Let's see, D, B minor, E minor, A7. D, B minor, E minor, A7. And then here, finally, we have a little bit of a different thing, because after this A7, we have a D suspended, which moves to D. So it changes a bit in that moment. But we had so many, basically all the both verses are those same 4 chords. But they don't get boring, because in all of this, everything's swirling around it. The voices shaping and exploring every corner of those harmonies and pushing ourselves over the top, carrying us through. And then the rhythm, as I said, that boy, and the way that the rhythm of what's being sung is not necessarily stacking vertically on top of the chords in the same space. So there's this fluidity and this naturalness to the sound that does not feel like your typical strophic 4-square song. So in that section there, where the voice becomes the focal point, notice how the instrumentation changes behind it a bit. And I guess the thing that stuck out to me here was, at first I heard the bass and then I heard the drum. And I like the way the drum gives a bit of extra energy here. Even just entering that, you heard the drum do a little bit of something extra there to set it apart and to move us into this next rhythmic experience. It's nice to enjoy the ensemble of that guitar strumming and the bass playing its little line, and the drums with its little touches here and there. And they're all so nicely woven together. As much as I've talked about the voices and how I love the blend of the voices, I really enjoy the instrumental ensemble behind it as well. And I feel like it's very tastefully done. That's not a word that I've used for the Beatles up to this point. Suddenly in this song, I feel like I'm talking about tasteful arranging, refined, well balanced. Every detail is just so nicely placed, and this is a very polished performance. Even the voices sound different. They sound much smoother, less raw. Well, of course it has somewhat to do with the whole arrangement, but that's the point, because it's the same voices as were singing all the previous songs. Now suddenly we start hearing a new capacity in this group, and at least I hear it, and I enjoy it a lot. I feel like suddenly they've matured, they've grown, and what we're hearing is no longer this adolescent world. It's something entirely different and really becoming a bit sophisticated in its own way. And it fades out in such a way that you never hear the concluding note. And as I said, it's a really great way to end the song because the lyrics are telling us about this state of this relationship and this boy and that boy. Kind of a bit of playing around with this and that. Thus. And these lyrics also, I feel like they are much more developed and somehow sophisticated. It's still talking about love, the relationship between a boy and an unnamed girl, obviously. But the whole plot, and even the way the plot is presented, is so much more sophisticated and subtle in its setup, in its design, in its presentation. And there's more pain, there's more melancholy in this than in the previous songs as well. The previous songs were, I think I said it along the way, puppy love, just the euphoria, the happiness, the carefree stage of life where I'm in love with a girl and it's wonderful, it's great, and we're happy, and we have all these wonderful feelings and ambitions and anticipations and hopes and dreams, and it's all in through a very rose-colored lens. And now suddenly we have this, which has a hint of darkness in it. There's the lost love. There's this idea of suffering, potential suffering in the relationship that exists in the moment. And not only from the narrator's perspective of his loss of the one he loves, but also what he thinks he sees in the relationship that's developing in front of his eyes, and the idea of crying and pain and all of this suddenly comes out of where? Because we didn't have this in the earlier songs. So it is a leap forward in more ways than one. And, well, this is where we are in the Beatles' journey. And we'll see what comes next. But obviously, things are changing rapidly in their experience, in their maturity, in their skill level. I'll see you next time.